Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast Saturday. Well, President Bola Tinubu has warned that ministers who do not deliver on their assignments and set targets will be sacked. He revealed this at the opening of a three-day cabinet retreat themed delivering on the renewed hope agenda for ministers, presidential aides, permanent secretaries, and top government functionaries. Earlier last month, Hadiza Bala Usman, who was the special advisor to the president on policy coordination, had disclosed that each minister would sign a performance bond with the president. And President Tinubu noted that it is important for ministries and other agencies to collaborate effectively in order to achieve results. And he also reaffirmed his confidence in the democratic process.
They are going to sign a bond of understanding between you, the ministers, the permanent secretary, and myself. If you are performing, nothing to fear. If you miss the objective, we review. If no performance, you leave us.
We have joining us now via Zoom from Abuja, who will also help to dissect some of these takeaways from the presidential retreat. Ezekiel Nya-Etok, who is a public affairs analyst and the chairman of Novon Consult. Thank you very much for joining us at this time. So looking at the fallout of the presidential retreat, where the president, gave some interesting talking points at the start and now at the end of the retreat, he said, amongst other things, that his mandate, his administration's mandate is to draw at least 50 million Nigerians out of poverty. And he also, urged his ministers to toe that line in all their respective portfolios. But what did you make of, this presidential retreat and what it set out to achieve?
Number one, thanks for having me and good morning to all Nigerians. 1, 2, 3 things jump out at me. The very first is that there's always been presidential retreats. There's always been this, signing of the code to abide by whatever are the, KPIs, the key performance indicators that an administration has set up. There's always been. I've always followed them personally. But 1, 2, 3 things stand out in this particular case. One of them is that there's a level of engagement of the public, openness to it. The second is that there is a very deliberate and intentional communication of his vision and what we may call the dire consequences by the current president that has not really been in the past. So to that extent, I think that 1 or 2 things again jump out at me, and one of them is the office of the citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the responsibility. We have our privileges where we must have a government that serves us very well, conscientiously, but we also have responsibilities as citizens, and there's something else that the current president has done right, and what I am impressed with. And that is that there's always been, not always been, in the last administration, there was the tracker, last 2 administrations, there was the tracker modality of the projects and the processes of government, which was effectively shut down in the last administration. And he has now come to openly say, you must, as citizens, or you must open it up to the citizens. Now, what he did not say, which is what is implied, is that you as citizens must of necessity wake up and be a principal partner in this process. So lots of things that are not novel, they are not novel, but they've been expressed in a different way that I am personally impressed with.
Well, you rightly said that the office of the citizens is very crucial at this time. But how important is the performance review of the ministers for this administration in order to achieve the hope agenda of this government?
Let me tell you how important it is. Mr. President, how do I put it in a way that I can communicate to Nigerians properly? Mr. President is like Nigeria. There is no Nigeria without the federating units. The 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory put together form Nigeria. Now the ministries, the departments, and the agencies form Mr. President. And the heads of this unit are the ministers. So the performance of Mr. President is directly proportional to the performance of each of the ministers, like each of the federating units of the state. So it is absolutely important, absolutely crucial that the KPIs, because the KPIs of the president of the ministers aggregate to form the KPIs of Mr. President. I hope that is very well communicated to show how absolutely important it is. Now, somewhere along the line, depending on how the discussions go, there are 1, 2, 3 imperatives that I would like to bring out so that we get to understand how absolutely crucial, important, inevitable that what Mr. President has done has come to be. And let me tell you that just as the performance of the ministers aggregates to the performance of Mr. President, the performance of Mr. President aggregates to the good or bad life that you live as a citizen. That's why it's absolutely necessary for my good self for Mr. President to perform. And for Mr. President to perform, the ministers must perform. So one door leads to the other. And I hope we can see how they all integrate or aggregate.
All right, let's quickly, get your understanding of this presidential tracker in addition to the bond that all the ministers have signed. Because yes, like it was asked yesterday, we all know the role of the KPI in the regular work setting. But let me ask you now, what's your understanding of this tracker that already contains the deliverables per minister? So if at periodic levels, intervals, you check and, a minister falls short of the deliverables, what's your understanding as to what happens next?
Great question. How do you track what you don't know? You can only track what you know, okay? And I've been working with bodies that have been, like Budget has had a national tracking. I handle what I would call a presidential initiative. I am doing a PPP on housing with the federal government. And there's this organization that keeps calling me and saying, sir, there is a provision of maybe 200 million in the budget for an estate, social housing estate in Uyo, and it was supposed to do a road. So please, may I know if that road has been done? And I'll smile and say, oh yes, actually they completed it last month, or it's about maybe 50 or 75% completed as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what report they are giving you there. So if they track to a single project in Uyo, it therefore means that it's a template that they are using for the national. Now, Budget has that template. The question is, no, not Budget, sorry, Policy Alert. Policy Alert. Please don't let me take one person's glory. Budget is doing something else awesome, but this is Policy Alert. So that mechanism that Policy Alert has access to must be made available to all Nigerians. We must learn to see what is in the budget. I created a group to track and monitor the budget of Akwa Ibom State. And somewhere along the line, as at that time I started, and there was a major, upheaval because there were things that we brought out that were not in the budget. There were things that were in the budget that we thought were preposterous. So every Akwa Ibom person, we created that template and they were able to see line by line the project. And on the basis of that, they were able to say this doesn't make sense. There's something that the National Assembly is doing, but how do we bring it to the office of the citizen so that they see line by line items? Every budget contains the details of the implementation paradigms of the administration. So it is for you to know that there is a road in your village, for you to know that there's a water project or there's a light project, because a budget is an aggregation of the capital and the recurrent. You may not know what's going on in the recurrent, but you can afford to track the capital. In the recurrent, you may just bring out, why are you spending this sort of money? What sort of training? Computer, but you bought them before. Why are we buying them again? So that is one part of the budget, but I don't think that the tracker gives you access to that part, or is intended, the intendment of the tracker is for that of recurrent. But let's come to the one we know about, which is the capital, and do what I've just said that Policy Alert does. Now, coming back to the KPIs, I can relate to it because I've been a private sector person all my life. Let me tell you, before you arrive at the KPIs, there are certain foundations that we must understand. And I hope to land on a particular note, which I don't know, time is or flies very fast. First is that you must understand the inevitability, of this presidential retreat. A lot of people are brought in from different angles, political considerations and everything, and they come in. Somebody has to say, guys, you're welcome, number one. Number two, you've come here to drive my vision, to drive my agenda, to drive my budget. I have christened my agenda as renewed hope. Within this context of the renewed hope, I want to bring out so people from poverty, number one. Number two, I want to have a foreign policy thrust that makes sure that Nigeria or Africa is the center of our foreign policy. Number three, I want to make sure that Nigeria becomes an investment destination, not just investment, but also tourism. We have potentials. I want to make sure that our Naira, is respected globally. As a result, I have set this, I've set up consultants, they've dialogued, they've negotiated, they have been able to come up with this for the Ministry of Finance. You are going to have this as your target. Minister, on communication, this is your target. On housing, for instance, which is my turf, I want to make sure that the housing, number one, we have proper housing, data and statistics, because all the 17 million, 20 million every year doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand it. Number two, whatever it is, we want to reduce that deficit by nothing less than 10% in each of the years of my administration. Now, it is up to the Minister of Housing to see the vision and the policy thrust of the government with respect to housing, to go back and look, because these were given to them before they came for the retreat, to go back and look at what he needs to do. So he's going to come back to the president and say, sir, assuming that we want to build, let me just take a very simple hypothetical, situation on housing. One is that we can instigate, the real estate developers association of Nigeria, the private sector, the individuals to build. But within us, we want to be able to deliver 100 houses. I'm just taking a figure that we can easily relate to because I want to do an analogy. Now, out of these 100 houses, so the average cost of a house is 10 million, say. So we are going to need 100 million, a billion, and the president is going to look at it and say, okay, if that's the case, we really can't afford a billion looking at everything put together. It means that we can only afford 500 million. That means that we're going to be able to do 50 houses. So there has to be, before you can talk of KPIs, there must be a project approach. In a project, you have several, components. You must have a direct what you want to do. Let me put in a very layman's language. You must have a direct what you want to do. You must have a timeline when you want to do that project. Right. You must have a budget. Right. So putting this together, those are the things that really formed the presidential retreat and how you arrived at the KPIs.
Oh, you will agree with me that the president is a listening president that listens to the aspirations and yearnings of Nigerians. But let me quickly ask this question. How transparent will this KPIs be for Nigerians to be able to track, to know performing ministers and less performing ministers?
The test of the pudding, they say, is in the eating. You see, it's good for the president to have a lady that I have a lot of respect for sitting on top of that agency is good for the president. But the real McCoy is not the lady. It's going to be policy alert made a national mantra. It's going to be Nigerian professionals. You see, let me tell you something about project and social media and why the professionals. A man wants to build a bungalow. Another man wants to build an 18-story building. So the man that wants to build a bungalow, before he can say, Jack, the foundation is done, the buildings are up, it has been roofed, the man that is doing an 18-story building is still drilling the piles. Now the uninformed passerby starts to vilify the man that what he's doing, he's not doing anything, he's rubbish every day, he's just making noise. We don't even know what they're doing. Meanwhile, look at this man, his house is out, they're about to start to paint. So the professionals have to enlighten us on project implementation, processes and procedures, timelines. When Nigerians are informed that, no, while this man will use 6 months to build his bungalow, in 6 months, this guy is still doing the substructure, he's still piling. Now, on account of the knowledge and understanding, Nigerians will be able to rate ministers properly. Because in some places, you are going to see immediate results. In some other places, please don't go for immediate results. Go for proper foundation laying, because government is a continuum. There are certain things that in the 4 years of this administration, if they want to give us a good Nigeria and not a political Nigeria, we are not going to see. It's still going to be substructure. They would have laid a solid foundation for the take of the Nigeria of our dreams. It's only if God blesses him with a second term that you now start to see, oh, so this is what he's been doing, because he's going to do the first decking, and they say, is it just the story building? He could do the second decking, he does the third. By the time he gets to the third, they're like, wow, what's going on? Oh boy, this is different. We never seen this type before, because the man took time not to be political, but to be professional. So I think that the KPIs must be made public, and it must be made in an informed manner. And we must be honest and realistic. Every minister should not be too much in a hurry to hold on to your portfolio. I want to be minister, because at the end of the day, this government might just be serious and different. Go back and say the targets set, except they are cash backed, are not going to be realizable. The targets set, except you change the procurement procedure, will not be realizable. Why do we have projects that keep failing and failing and failing? It's because of a lot of times, because of our procurement, laws and procedures. Because look, if you give me money to do the substructure of a road, I've cleared it, I've excavated, I've backfilled, I have done the stone base and every single thing, and I need maybe 50 billion, or let me bring it down, I need 10 billion, and you put 5 billion in the budget, I'm going to go halfway, I will not complete it. Now what's going to happen is that I'm going to do the surface dressing and complete it, and the rains are going to come. When the rains come, they are going to wash away what I've done. In the next budget, you release the next 5 billion to complete it. That out of that 5 billion, 3.5 is going to go back to making good what has already been destroyed by the weather.
All right.
On account of not having.
All right, quickly, please. 2 questions more that my colleague and I will bring. Let's quickly manage the time. I just wanted to, get your take on the visibility, the role, the more visible role that we see that permanent secretaries will be having in this present administration. Now it's been mandated that they will also accompany the ministers, the supervising ministers now for FEC meetings. And of course, we've also seen the president harping on, closer relationship, inevitable closer relationship between the ministers and the civil servants.
Now the sound bite is different and it's reassuring and it's good. But I need to be careful to say something. We can either have a fantastic president who will get his second term without thinking twice because he's politically serving. His political sagacity is one that cannot be questioned. And he will give us a lot of sound bites, the things to say, and what to do. Or we're going to have a president that becomes a generational transformer. A president that is going to step into the room of the likes of the Lee Kuan Yews. And that's not going to take a good politician. He's going to take a committed nationalist. The sound bites are good. Are they coming from a good politician who knows what to say per time, and with time he knows how to alter the dynamics? Or are we having a nationalist who means everything he's saying and wants to get it done? Let me tell you, what you've just asked is so crucial and so fundamental. Ministers are soldiers, they come, they go. But PAMSECs are the barracks, they stay. And so long as we put the responsibility all in on the ministers, the real engine room of every single ministry is the commissioners and not the commissioners, is the directors and the permanent secretary and the directors. The commissioners are just, I wouldn't want to use the word figurehead, but they are the mobile structure.
The ministers.
The soft structure, yes. So it's very important that not commissioners, that
ministers,
permanent secretaries start to know that as from today, they are taking responsibility and they will be held to account. With that,
just a moment, it's either for the ministers to perform or get sacked, and that is what the president is saying at the moment. What do you think Nigerians are expecting from this particular administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Is that these ministers are performing, or they are there to go back to their various homes? Nigerians are expecting more from this administration. What's your advice to the president, to the ministers at this time?
If I want to be very honest with Mr. President, I'll tell him, sir, none of your ministers should be a political leader. None. They should be professionals. They are your engine room. They cannot afford the luxury of being distracted by politics. If you want to lay a good foundation for Nigeria, none of your ministers should be a political. Go to each state, put up your political structure. You know this more than I do. You've done it over the years. So set up your political structure independent of your administration. Let your administration be 100% professional. When you do that, you are going to have an administration where when you get into fire will be sparking from the brains of people. You'll be having the best decisions coming out. You'll be taking decisions that align with the expectations and yearnings of the dreams of Nigeria, which you have articulated in your renewed hope agenda. So for me, that is number one. Number two, Mr. President, I beseech you by the mercies of God, be willing to put your life on the line. And he met that word of Queen Esther, if I perish, I perish. Let the good of Nigeria be better to you than your second term bid. At the end of the day, you have the two for the price of one, and your name will definitely get into the global stage of the likes of Lee Kuan Yew. I keep repeating that because you would have brought Nigeria with all its potentials to where it ought to be. Nigeria is that giant that is waiting to be activated. It's there, and you can be that activator. And don't want to be the best politician, be the best statesman that Nigeria could have. That is the yearning. That is the hope. That is the expectation of Nigerians. They are hoping that we will today have a president that is different from other presidents.
All right, Architect Ezekiel Nya-Etok, we thank you very much for your contributions on TVC Breakfast Saturday.
Thanks, what a privilege. Thanks for having me.